I always knew I was different, but not in a way that made me special. In my own home, I was invisible, the shadow lingering behind Camilla, the cousin who could do no wrong. Birthdays, holidays, even lazy Sunday mornings were a silent reminder of where I stood. My parents' voices softened when they said her name. Their smiles stretched just a little wider when she entered a room. And me? I was just there, watching, pretending it didn't sting. I told myself, over and over, that if I tried harder, if I was good enough, maybe one day they would look at me the same way. But you can't unsee favoritism once you recognize it. Camilla always got the first slice of cake, the newest clothes, the invitations to expensive summer programs. I got whatever was left, hand-me-downs, distracted nods, and the expectation to be grateful, no matter how little I received. Camilla needs it more, my mother would say, like it was obvious. She has so much potential. The words didn't have to be cruel to cut deep. I understood what they meant. She was worth investing in. I wasn't. And so I learned to bite my tongue, to make myself small, to swallow the bitterness like medicine. But then came the moment that shattered everything. My college acceptance letter arrived, a lifeline, a way out, proof that I could be more than forgotten. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, my hands gripping the paper, my heart pounding as I told them. I had done it. I had made it. My father sighed before I even finished speaking. "We can't afford it," he said, like he was telling me the weather. My mother shifted in her chair. "Camila's tuition takes everything we have." And just like that, my future was dismissed, swept aside, like all the other times I had come second to her. But this time, it wasn't just unfair. It was betrayal. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. Something inside me snapped into place, something cold and unbreakable. They had made their choice, and now I would make mine. Without a word, I stood up, gripping that letter so tightly my knuckles went white. If they wouldn't lift me up, I would climb on my own. And one day, whether they realized it or not, they would regret this. I left the room that day without looking back. But the silence wasn't empty. It was loud, heavy, pressing against my skin like a weight I'd carried my whole life. I could hear them in the kitchen, the clinking of dishes, the murmured conversation, but none of it was about me. No one ran after me. No one stopped to ask if I was okay. That was the moment I understood something I had refused to believe for years. I was never their priority. I was an afterthought, a footnote in my own family's story. And if that was how they wanted it, fine. I wouldn't waste another second trying to belong where I was never wanted. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the acceptance letter still in my hands. The words blurred, but I didn't cry. I was done crying over them. Instead, I made a promise, to myself, to the girl who had spent her entire childhood waiting for love that would never come. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't break. I would rise, not to prove anything to them, but to prove it to myself. They had taken everything they could from me, but they couldn't take my ambition. If they wouldn't pay for my future, I would build one with my own hands. The next morning, I started looking for jobs. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to stay in that house a second longer than I had to. I applied for scholarships, took on extra shifts wherever I could, anything to scrape together the money I needed. My parents barely noticed. They were too busy fussing over Camilla, too wrapped up in their perfect golden child, to see that the daughter they had ignored was slipping through their fingers. It was almost funny. Almost. And Camilla? She didn't care. Maybe she never had. She would flash me a sympathetic smile every now and then, but it was empty, like a reflex. She never once said, "This isn't fair." Never once looked at me and acknowledged what was happening. Because why would she? She was their favorite. She was the sun in their sky, and I was just a shadow. But shadows don't disappear. They stretch. They grow. And I was done being small. I stopped trying to make them see me. That was the first real step toward freedom. I ate dinner at the same table as them, answered when spoken to, played my part in the background of their lives, but I wasn't really there anymore. I was somewhere else, already planning, already moving. While my mother gushed about Camilla's grades, about how she would bring so much honor to our family, I was mapping out my escape. Every shift I picked up, every dollar I saved, was another brick in the bridge I was building to a life without them. The funny thing was, they never noticed. They never asked why I was out late or why I looked so exhausted. My father once glanced at the stack of books on my desk and asked, "Why are you working so hard? You're not even in school." I remember the way he said it, like it was pointless, like I had no reason to try. And that was when I knew for sure. They had never expected anything from me. Not success, not ambition, not even independence. In their eyes, I had no future beyond being the daughter who would always come second. But I wasn't going to be their afterthought anymore. The day I moved out, I didn't even tell them. I packed my bags while they were out, left my key on the kitchen counter, and walked out of that house without saying a word. No big speech, no dramatic farewell, just silence. Because that's what they had given me my whole life. And if they ever looked around and wondered where I had gone, well, they had no one to blame but themselves. Starting over was brutal. No safety net, no backup plan, just me, a suitcase, and the weight of every choice I'd ever made. The first nights were the hardest. I slept on a friend's couch, then a cheap rented room where the walls were thin and the heater barely worked. But I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for a way out. I took whatever jobs I could find, waiting tables, cleaning offices, stocking shelves in the dead of night. Exhaustion became my constant companion, but so did something else. Hunger. Not the kind that made my stomach growl, but the kind that burned, that pushed me forward when my body begged me to stop. I applied for every scholarship I could find. Some rejected me outright, others sent polite regrets, but every now and then, one said yes. And that was enough. It had to be. Every acceptance was a step forward, every rejection just more fuel for the fire. I learned to stretch every dollar, to make sacrifices, to rely on nothing but my own willpower. I kept my grades high, my head down, and my expectations low. Because if life had taught me anything, it was that no one was coming to save me. My parents never called, not once. I told myself I didn't care, but the truth was, I checked my phone more often than I'd admit. Maybe some part of me still wanted them to reach out, to ask how I was doing. But they never did. Not when I struggled to pay rent. Not when I skipped meals to afford textbooks. Not when I collapsed from exhaustion after another double shift. They had erased me, just as easily as I had walked out of their lives. And Camilla? She thrived. At least, that's what they said. I heard bits and pieces through mutual friends, how she was excelling, how she was everything they had dreamed she'd be. And I let them have that illusion. I let them believe she was soaring while I disappeared. What they didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't drowning. I was climbing. Success didn't come all at once. It wasn't some grand moment of triumph, no cinematic victory where everything fell into place. It came in quiet, relentless steps. One scholarship, one extra shift, one sacrificed night of sleep at a time. I learned to survive on black coffee and sheer determination. Some days, it felt like the weight of it all would crush me. But then, I would remember, I wasn't just doing this for a degree. I was proving something. To myself, to them, to the version of me that had been discarded like an afterthought. And slowly, painfully, I built something out of nothing. My hard work paid off in ways they never expected, because they had never expected anything from me at all. I graduated ahead of schedule, top of my class, with more job offers than I knew what to do with. I still remember the way my hands trembled when I signed my first contract, a salary higher than anything my parents had ever earned. I had done it. Without them. Because of them. I never reached out, and neither did they. By then, it wasn't surprising. They still had Camilla, after all. Their pride and joy. She was the one they had sacrificed everything for, the one who was supposed to make all their dreams come true. And I let them have that. Let them believe she was still soaring while I stayed in the shadows. What they didn't realize was that shadows grow. They stretch. And while they were busy worshiping their golden child, I had built a world where they no longer mattered. Then one day I heard the news. Camilla had dropped out. The perfect daughter, the shining star, she had burned out before she could even reach the sky. I sat with that information for a long time, waiting for the feeling to come, the satisfaction, the the validation. But instead, I just felt nothing. Not pity, not joy. Just a quiet understanding that life has a way of balancing things out. I should have felt something when I heard about Camilla. Maybe a flicker of satisfaction, some twisted sense of justice. But all I felt was distance, like I was hearing about a stranger. She had been given everything: opportunities, support, unconditional love. And still, somehow it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, I had scraped by with nothing and turned it into something real. Maybe that was the difference between us. Maybe it had always been. The news didn't change my life. I kept working, kept building. My business grew. Slow at first, but then, like a wildfire, it took off. Late nights spent grinding, networking, making decisions that scared me but pushed me forward. They all started paying off. Suddenly, the girl who wasn't worth investing in was making moves that people couldn't ignore. My name started appearing in places it never had before. Not in my family's conversations, of course, but that no longer mattered. Then one evening, as I was leaving my office, my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in years. I let it ring twice, my heart beat steady, my hand hovering over the decline button. But curiosity won, just this once. I picked up. Sophia. My mother's voice. It was strange, hearing her say my name after all this time. A pause, then a breath, as if she were swallowing pride before forcing out the words, "We need your help." I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch between us, heavy with all the years they had never once reached out. And in that moment, standing there with the city lights reflecting off the glass windows around me, I realized something. The power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the forgotten child. I was the one holding all the cards. For a long moment, I said nothing. Just held the phone to my ear, letting her words settle into the space between us. "We need your help." I turned the phrase over in my mind, dissecting it like an unfamiliar language. There was no warmth in her voice, no regret, no acknowledgement of the years that had passed in silence. Just necessity. A call made not out of love, but out of desperation. I leaned against my desk, my fingers tracing the smooth wood, my mind already piecing together the situation before she could even explain it. They were struggling. The golden child had failed them. And now, after all this time, after years of being nothing more than a shadow in their lives, they wanted something from me. Of course they did. Because that's what I had always been to them. A resource, an option they could ignore until they had no choice but to acknowledge it. I took a slow breath, steadying my voice before I spoke. "What happened?" I asked, keeping my tone even, unreadable. Another pause, as if she wasn't sure how much to say, or maybe she was weighing the best way to spin it. "Your father lost his job a few months ago," she admitted finally. "And with Camilla, well, things haven't turned out the way we hoped. We're in a difficult situation, Sophia. We just need a little help getting back on our feet." I almost laughed. A little help. As if what they had done to me was a minor inconvenience, something easily forgotten. As if I owed them something. As if I was still that girl sitting at the kitchen table, gripping my college acceptance letter while they told me there was nothing left for me. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I let the silence stretch, just long enough to make her uncomfortable. It was strange, how the power between us had shifted. Years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to prove my worth to them. I would have given anything to hear my mother's voice softened with something other than indifference. But now I felt nothing but a distant sort of curiosity, like watching an old film play out, already knowing the ending. "How's Camilla?" I finally asked, keeping my voice light, casual. I wanted to hear it from her. I wanted to make her say it. Another hesitation, then a sigh. She's going through a rough time." My mother's voice wavered, as if saying it aloud made it real. "She had to leave school. Things haven't been easy for her." Had to leave school. They still couldn't admit she had failed, that she had wasted everything they had given her. I imagined their world crumbling. The perfect daughter, the golden child, turned out to be just as flawed as anyone else. And me? The one they had cast aside had built a life they never even thought possible. I leaned back in my chair, drumming my fingers against the armrest. "And what exactly are you asking from me?" I said, knowing full well they weren't just looking for emotional support. "We need some financial help," she admitted, voice small now. "Just until we get back on our feet. We know you're doing well, Sophia, and we thought maybe you'd want to help your family." Family. The word hung in the air like an accusation, like it meant something, like it had ever meant anything when I was the one who needed them. I almost smiled at the irony. Help your family. The same family that had watched me struggle, that had turned their backs when I needed them the most. And now, with their perfect daughter failing them, with their finances crumbling, they suddenly remembered I existed. The afterthought, the spare, the one who was never worth investing in, now I was their last resort. I took my time answering, letting them sit in their own discomfort. "You know," I said finally, my voice calm, measured. "When I needed help, I remember being told there wasn't enough money, that Camilla's education was more important. I remember figuring out how to survive on my own because you made it clear I wasn't your priority." My mother inhaled sharply. "Sophia, that was a long time ago. We were doing what we thought was best at the time." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "Right. What was best for Camilla?" Silence. It was the first time I had ever said it so plainly, the first time I had thrown the truth back in their faces instead of swallowing it down. And it felt good. No, better than good. It felt like justice. I could hear the tension in my mother's breathing, the struggle to find the right words. "We made mistakes," she admitted at last, "but we're still your parents. Doesn't family mean something to you?" I should have felt something at that. Guilt, maybe. Hesitation. But I didn't. Because family had never meant anything when I was the one who needed them. And now, they needed me. And I was going to make sure they felt the weight of that truth. I leaned forward, pressing my elbows onto the desk, my fingers laced together as I stared at nothing in particular. My mother was still on the line, waiting, expecting. She thought that if she framed it right, if she used the word family enough times, I'd cave. Maybe once I would have. Maybe once I would have given anything to finally belong. But that girl was long gone. "I'll help," I said at last, keeping my voice even. I heard her exhale in relief, but before she could speak, I added, "But on my terms." The pause that followed was heavy. What do you mean?" I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "You need money? Fine. But I don't do charity. You'll sign a contract. Every dollar I give, you'll pay back, with interest. I want it in writing with deadlines, just like any other financial agreement." I let the words settle, let her process what I was saying. "After all, I wouldn't want you to think I was just throwing money away. Isn't that what you taught me?" Her breath caught. "Sophia, we're your parents." "And?" I tilted my head, as if genuinely curious. That never seemed to matter before. Silence stretched between us. The kind that wasn't just empty, but loaded, thick with unspoken things. I imagined her sitting there, gripping the phone, struggling to swallow the bitterness of her own choices. Maybe she had expected resistance, but not like this. Not a cold, calculated response. Not conditions. "You can't be serious," she finally said, her voice quieter now, less sure of itself. "I'm always serious," I replied, my tone flat. "You taught me that too. Money isn't given. It's earned." She exhaled sharply, like I had slapped her. "We're not asking for much, Sophia, just enough to survive," I finished for her. "To get by?" I let out a soft, humorless laugh. "I know what that feels like. I know what it's like to count every penny, to wonder how I'm going to afford the next month, the next meal, the next step. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Because when I was struggling, you never once asked how I was doing." "That's not fair," she snapped, sudden, defensive. "We did the best we could. We were trying to secure a future for Camilla." I felt my stomach twist. Not in pain, not in regret, but in something sharper. Even now, she couldn't say it. She couldn't admit it. She couldn't say, "We should have helped you too." We were wrong. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "And where is she now?" I asked, my voice quiet, almost gentle. "That future you sacrificed everything for. Where did it go?" No answer. Because we both knew the truth. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, as if she was waiting for me to break. But I didn't. I had spent my whole life breaking for them, and I was done. "We made mistakes," she finally said, softer now, as if that was supposed to mean something, as if it could erase everything. "We weren't perfect, Sophia, but we're still your family." Family. There it was again, that word she clung to like a shield. I let it linger in the air between us, empty and weightless. "No," I said, my voice calm, steady. "You were Camilla's family. I was just there." Another sharp inhale, like she had been caught off guard. She wasn't expecting me to say it outright, but I wasn't playing her game anymore. I was done pretending, done softening the truth for their comfort. "Take it or leave it," I continued. "If you want my help, you'll accept my terms. You'll sign a contract, you'll follow my conditions, you'll work for every cent, just like I had to." Her voice wavered. "Sophia, please, don't do this." But that was the thing. I wasn't doing anything to them. I was just refusing to be the person they had taught me to be. The girl who gave and never asked for anything in return. The girl who was easy to forget. And if that was something they couldn't accept, that wasn't my problem. Not anymore. Days passed. Then a week. No response. I wasn't surprised. My mother had spent a lifetime expecting me to fold, to be the obedient daughter who swallowed disappointment with a forced smile. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I had given her a choice, and now she had to live with it. Then, late one evening, my phone buzzed. A message, not a call. "We'll sign the contract. Just tell us what we need to do." I stared at the words for a long moment, letting the weight of them settle. They had no choice. They had spent their entire lives teaching me that love was conditional, that resources were given only to those who deserved them. And now, for the first time, they were on the other side of that equation. I should have felt triumphant. And in a way, I did. But there was something else, too. Something hollow. This wasn't victory. It was just proof of what I had always known. They hadn't come back because they missed me. They hadn't come back because they realized they had been wrong. They came back because they needed something, and nothing more. I sent the contract the next morning. It was fair, more than fair. The repayment terms were manageable, the interest low, and I had even built in flexibility, just in case. Because unlike them, I wasn't cruel. I wasn't reckless with power. I wanted them to feel the weight of their choices, yes, but I didn't need to destroy them. A few days later, I got another message. We signed. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just those two words. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. They had never thanked me before, and I didn't expect them to start now. This was just another transaction for them, another way to get what they needed. And maybe that was the final lesson, the one I hadn't even realized I was still learning. Some people never change, but I had. I had built a life where they no longer had the power to hurt me, a life where their absence didn't leave wounds, just space. And as I sat there, phone still in my hand, I realized something else, something that should have been obvious. I didn't feel empty. I didn't feel lost. I felt free. The money left my account a few days later, a simple wire transfer, numbers shifting from one place to another. Clean, impersonal, just business. I wondered if they felt relief when they saw it, if they told themselves that, in the end, I had come through for them, like a good daughter should. I wondered if they convinced themselves that this meant something was repaired, that there was still a thread tying us together. But there was nothing left to repair. Camilla reached out a week later. A short message, hesitant. "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at the screen for a long time, thought about all the years she had basked in their love, all the times she had been silent when it mattered. Thought about how, even now, even after everything, she still assumed I would pick up where we left off. And maybe, in another life, I would have. Maybe there was a version of me that would have welcomed her back, that would have found comfort in finally being the one with power. But I had nothing left to give them. I deleted the message without responding. Then I turned off my phone, stretched my arms, and stood up, feeling lighter than I ever had before. This was my life now. No more waiting for them to see me. No more chasing after love that was never meant for me. And for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was truly free.